unaware that she's recording the conversation behind their back, and what the police officer says will shock you. Selena's heart raced as she popped the trunk, her mind swirling with uncertainty. She hadn't expected the situation to escalate this way, especially over a broken taillight. The officer peered into the trunk, shining his flashlight over the empty space, but his expression grew curious, as though he were searching for something specific. "Ma'am," he began, his tone firm, "can you explain this?" Selena frowned in confusion. "Explain what?" she asked, her voice trembling as she leaned out of the car to look at the trunk herself. Inside, there was nothing but an old picnic blanket and a box of her children's toys. It wasn't unusual or suspicious, but the officer seemed intent on something else. His demeanor changed. He stepped back from the car, his hand resting on the grip of his holstered weapon. "Stay where you are," he ordered, his voice sharper now. Selena, her fear mounting, quickly pressed record on her phone, the device tucked discreetly between her fingers. She had to capture this. Something felt terribly wrong. The officer stepped back to his vehicle, speaking into his radio. Selena could hear snippets of the conversation. "Vehicle matches the description. Need backup. Potentially armed." The words sent a chill down her spine. What description? What was going on? Within minutes, another patrol car arrived, lights flashing. Two more officers stepped out, their hands ready at their holsters. Selena's pulse pounded in her ears as one of them approached her window. "Ma'am, please step out of the car," the second officer demanded. Selena, trembling, complied. She had no idea what they thought she had done, but the presence of 3 officers over a taillight violation seemed excessive. As she stood by the roadside, one officer inspected the trunk again while the others questioned her. "Do you often drive this route?" one of them asked. "Yes," Selena replied cautiously. "I drive here every day to pick up my sons. Is something wrong?" "Have you been in this area between 10 p.m. and midnight in the last week?" the officer pressed. Selena shook her head. "No, I haven't. I'm home with my kids by that time. Why are you asking me this?" The officer's response stunned her. "Your car matches the description of a vehicle involved in a series of robberies in this area." "We're investigating." Selena was frozen in shock. Robberies? She was a single mother juggling work and parenting. The idea was ludicrous. She explained as much to the officers, her voice quivering but firm. "I have nothing to do with any robberies. My car's been parked in my driveway every night," she insisted, holding back tears. Meanwhile, the officer who had originally stopped her stepped away from the trunk, holding a small plastic bag in his hand. Selena's breath caught. She recognized it immediately. It was her kids' leftover sandwich bags from last week's picnic. But the officer's tone was accusatory. "This was in your trunk," he said. "Mom, do you want to explain?" Selena realized this was spiraling out of control. "That's just trash. I didn't even know it was there," she said desperately, holding up her phone. "This is all being recorded. I haven't done anything wrong." The officers exchanged glances. One of them sighed, clearly frustrated. The situation escalated until one of the officers, apparently the senior, took the lead. After reviewing Selena's license, registration, and hearing her side of the story, he instructed the original officer to stand down. "Ma'am," he said, his tone apologetic now. "It seems there's been a misunderstanding. Your vehicle does match the description of a car involved in a crime, but we've reviewed your information and everything checks out. You're free to go." Selena stared at him in disbelief. "That's it? After all this, I'm just free to go?" The senior officer nodded but added quietly, "I suggest getting those taillights fixed. It might save you from another misunderstanding." As Selena drove away, her hands gripping the wheel tightly, her phone still recording, she felt both relief and indignation. She would never forget the fear she'd felt, nor would she ignore the injustice of the situation. That night, she posted the video on social media, recounting her experience. The video went viral within hours, sparking heated discussions about police accountability. profiling, and the importance of recording interactions. Unbeknownst to Selena, her bravery in documenting the ordeal would lead to sweeping reforms in her community's policing practices and ensure that no one else would ever face the fear and confusion she endured that day. As Selena's video spread across the internet, it struck a chord with millions. The raw emotion in her voice, the fear in her trembling hands as she narrated the incident, and the stark reality of how easily things could have gone wrong made it impossible to ignore. News outlets picked up the story, and soon, Selena found herself fielding requests for interviews. At first, she was hesitant. She wasn't seeking fame or attention. She only wanted to make sure no one else experienced what she had. But after some reflection, she realized the power of her story to spark change. A week later, Selena stood on a small stage in her local park, facing a crowd of hundreds. People from all walks of life had come together to support her call for transparency and reform. Signs reading accountability now and record for justice dotted the crowd, while chants for change echoed in the air. "Thank you for being here," Selena began, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "What happened to me was terrifying, but I'm standing here today because I know it's not just about me. It's about all of us. If my story can prevent one more person from feeling the fear I felt, then it's worth sharing." Selena outlined her demands: mandatory body cameras for all officers, better training on de-escalation tactics, and a community oversight board to handle complaints. The crowd cheered, their support galvanizing her resolve. While many rallied around Selena, others criticized her. Some accused her of overreacting, while others claimed the officers were just doing their job. Online trolls tried to discredit her by digging into her past, but Selena stayed resilient, leaning on the support of her community and newfound allies. Among those allies was Detective Maria Cortez, a seasoned officer who had grown frustrated with systemic issues in law enforcement. Maria reached out to Selena privately, offering her insights and support. "Your right to demand change," Maria told her during one of their meetings. "And I want to help. Not all of us agree with how things are being handled." Together, Selena and Maria worked on a proposal for new community policing standards, drawing from Maria's insider knowledge and Selena's personal experience. They presented their plan to the city council, where Selena's courage and Maria's expertise made an undeniable impact. Months later, the city announced sweeping reforms. Officers were required to undergo regular training in cultural sensitivity and de-escalation techniques. A pilot program for community policing was launched, pairing officers with local residents to build trust and cooperation. Perhaps most importantly, the city approved funding for body cameras, ensuring interactions like Selena's would always have a clear record. Selena's experience also inspired others to share their stories. People began posting their own videos, forming a grassroots movement called Voices for Justice. Selena became a leading figure in the movement, advocating for systemic change not just in her city but nationwide. Through it all, Selena's primary motivation remained her children. She wanted them to grow up in a world where they could trust the people meant to protect them. As she tucked them into bed one night, her youngest son asked, "Mom, are you still scared of the police?" Selena paused, considering her answer. "I'm not scared anymore," she said, stroking his hair, "because now people are watching. People are listening and things are getting better." For Selena, the journey wasn't just about fixing a broken system. It was about turning fear into courage, injustice into action, and hope into reality. What started as a terrifying encounter on the side of the road had become a powerful movement for change, proof that even the smallest voices could create a ripple that transformed the world.